So what you're looking at here is a simple geometric form, what we might call a geometric solid. It's essentially a pyramid. It's really a tall, skinny pyramid, but it's 4 sides on a square base. And what I did with this one, it's white, but I went in and put some marker lines around it to try to help illustrate the concept of contour and cross contour. So let me draw it the wrong way, and I think you'll see immediately why that's not going to work. Let me drop the light so you can see the screen a little better. I probably have to put a light on my subject to make that visible. Looky there. How high tech. Okay. Now, can you guys see right along this edge here that there's 2 planes visible to you on the screen? And they're going like one to the left, one to the right. Okay, so the wrong way of going about doing this, I'm going to back up the camera just a little bit. Yep, wrong way. I would consider this kind of the wrong way of doing things. If you drew it in your image so that the front of the pyramid was a completely flat plane to your composition, that's not really what it looks like on the screen, is it? Because with the camera, and I'm standing up, so I have pretty much the same view as the camera right now, my eye line is looking down on it, right? So I wouldn't see that bottom edge as a straight horizontal. What should the bottom edge look like? Exactly, it should be kind of a triangle in its own right. It should be angles in 2 directions. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to fake it, especially like that, right? That looks really wrong now, doesn't it? And if I was to go in and do flat lines like this on this plane, parallel more or less to the base, that seems okay-ish. But if I do that over here, didn't I just kind of kill the 3-dimensional illusion completely? Now, it makes some sense, though, to put lines like that on there because they're straight and you know that that plane is flat. But really, it should look more like this. If this is my paper or the border of my image, from my point of view, and I'm going to leave off the little decorative bits, but from my point of view, I just see an angle like this and an angle like that at the base, and then a really tall height like so. Yeah? Does that feel a little more like what you see on the screen? But then if I'm doing these, what we call cross contour, the lines that go across the surface, if I imagine it going across this plane, if I were to come in and do a line right here that was straight like that, doesn't that look off? Because now it's parallel to the bottom of the picture, to the frame I drew, but it's not on the same angle as the plane of the pyramid itself, so that's way off. Shouldn't they do this? Yeah? Again, if I was to do this the wrong way and just go straight across here, that also looks weird, doesn't it? But they should bend, right? And once I do that, doesn't that start to make it look really 3-dimensional? It's a pretty simple idea in a way. It is harder to do it with an object that has a little bit more detail, more surface changes, but that's where I want us to start today, is to practice with some funky things. So I took some spray paint and some kids' toys, and I made you some toy cars to play with. These we're going to draw in this kind of cross-contour style. It's almost like if you think about what a globe looks like, right? The equator line, prime meridian line, those are ways of marking points on the globe. But other than the ones that are straight in front of you, don't we get curvature this way to make it round? And to the left, and to the up, and to the down, right? Those curves around the shape are the cross contours, and that's what we're looking to do with this object. So you can think about, with this guy, you can think about trying to draw a line. Let me zoom in on him. If I were to physically draw on this object, if I turn it to an angle to the screen, I could do a contour line that goes across the front of the object, across the grill, in and out, over the headlamps, around the corner, in and out over the door handle details, over this weird, I guess that's a window. Even though there isn't a literal line there, can you see how that line moves in and out a little bit in space, especially for the camera right there, right where that part kind of bumps out. I can also go this direction, over that window, down, over that little lip, and down under the undercarriage. So now you're really starting to get dimension on this object without having to draw necessarily the individual details, to show the color of it, to deal with highlights or shading. So I've spray painted a half dozen or so of these weird little toy cars. There are a bunch of them. I'm going to put them over here on the printing press so you can get out them more comfortably. Everybody choose one and grab a piece of newsprint. You can take from my stack down there if you don't have your own. And you can fold your newsprint down to a small size. We only need about the size of an 8.5 by 11 page. But go ahead and pick a toy card. And we're going to try rendering it in cross contour. So a couple tips before you get too far along. We don't want just outlines. So it's not that outlines are evil or wrong or bad, but a lot of times what happens when we start drawing is we will instinctively put that outside barrier, the edge or the silhouette of the shape. And even if there are proportional mistakes, we are very unlikely to erase it and change it. Partially, I think, because of coloring books, quite honestly. But can you see a proportional error in the drawing there of that pair of pliers? Doesn't it kind of look like the handles are a bit too short and the part on the right-hand side is a little bit too thick? Vivian, we've got, grab a toy car as long as you're near it, piece of newsprint if you don't have your own. We're doing cross-contour drawings. There's newsprint on the shelf there if you don't have your own. So you can see there's a proportion mistake in that drawing to begin with, right? So the likelihood of the person who drew that changing it is actually pretty slim. The accuracy in the other one is a little more on point. It's a plant in a pot that seems pretty believable in terms of spatial relationships, but there's no movement on the surface to make it seem round. So we want to avoid the outline only. This drawing is more complex by far, but can you see that there are some lines around her silhouette? Are there lines like around her hair that show the border of the shape of her hairdo? For sure, yeah? Where are lines, though, that aren't only on that outside silhouette border? Where are some lines that describe something other than just the outside shape? Yeah, that was the one that the other class called out immediately, was knee and shin, and it really stands out, doesn't it? It's kind of one of the focal points of that drawing. There are lines, if I move the mouse on there, I think you can see it. Can you see me? There we are. That line right there around the kneecap, underneath that little knobbly part of the bone of the kneecap, and this line here along the shin, all of those are not on the outside edge anymore. Those lines are showing you changes in the surface, right? Where the shin bone and the knee project forward. That's a change in volume or change in surface. Where's some other lines like that? The clothing, holy cow, look at her elbow joint. right? There's tons of folds in the clothing there. There's folds even in the skin, underneath the garment a little bit, under the skirt, in the elbow area especially. All of those are what we would call contour lines. So you're thinking about 3 dimensions of your object. These are examples of kind of yes, no, good, bad outline drawing versus contour drawing. Can you see the difference? Look at the shoes, especially. That shoe is one of my favorite bad drawings ever. Because if you look at it in one way, doesn't it kind of look like you're looking at a shoe at eye level, straight across, as if you are looking at the area where the brand name would be? If I cover it up like that, doesn't it look like you're looking at it in profile? Mm-hmm. But if I cover that up, doesn't it look like you're looking straight down? So those 2 points of view don't go together, right? This is somebody who's really more focused on some outer edges, more about what the shoe looks like in their mind. Does not look more believable? And it has that curvature, you know, especially a tennis shoe is going to curve out in this area right here. And of course, part of that is the pattern or the design of the shoe. But you can see lines moving across that surface. Same thing, obviously, with the hands. I mean, that's kind of pitiful, right? But in here, you can see all the folds in the skin. You can see all those different volumes. That's what we're looking to try to be thinking about. But we're going to do it even a little more systematically, like the demo I was doing right at the start. We're going to do something more like this. Can you see what look like human legs? Probably female legs, I think, right? Now, I could argue with you and say that she's wearing stripy tights, but unlikely. This is a drawing that a person has made of a human figure with the concept that we're going for today, cross contour. Now, the bone from your hip to your knee is the longest bone in your body. That's a long, straight line, really. That dimension in this drawing is oriented which way? The thigh bone. Is it going vertical or horizontal? Horizontal, right? Left to right. But which way are the contour lines going? They're going up, down, vertical. Now they're curved, right? They're not just perfectly flat. But that's what I mean by cross contour. It goes across the surface. Is she likely to have skin folds where all of those lines are? Probably not, right? Probably not at that muscle tone. Look at the difference between her leg and her leg. Are you likely to see a, quote, literal line along the shin? Yeah, I think that's a pretty literal line. Are you likely to see horizontal stripes across somebody's leg when they're standing straight up and down? Probably not. So the contour line is a line that shows the volumetric changes. A cross contour is going to go almost like latitude or longitude lines on a globe. It's going to go around the surface. Can you see a fist there? That's an awesome one. And you can tell exactly what it's doing, but again, some of those lines might be real, where there really is a fold in the skin around the knuckle or where the mass of the finger joints come together. But a lot of those are not real. They're not literal. They are lines that have been drawn to create the illusion that that object is three-dimensional. That's what we're trying to do with these little toy cars. Why does it matter? Everybody wants to work for Pixar or Marvel, or when you think about the gaming industry, video game, computer-generated images of all kinds, we very often are more attracted to, more interested in those that appear to be believably three-dimensional. So this kind of thinking is absolutely critical toward making the illusion of making something look fully 3D. Now, obviously, this is a weird pose. This is part of the character design planning out. I think this is Kung Fu Panda. But you get the basic concept here, right? There is a very literal grid that goes across his body horizontally and across his body vertically to show you the volumes. That's what you're trying to draw today. Now, I'm not expecting you to be a computer. You're a human being. So yours might be a little less measured than what you just saw. But take a look at those two apples. Can you see lines that go around them? One of them is a little more controlled like a grid, and one is a little looser. So again, I'm not trying to push one specific agenda on you style-wise, but I want you to be thinking along these volumetric changes. You see my little globe there again? That's what you're going to do to your toy car. You feel me? All right, let's try it. I promise I'll raise the lights in a second. I just have to figure out how to get out of this. There we go. If you need pencils, there are graphite pencils over here. There's some erasers if you want those for today. I would work slightly bigger than the size of the toy car you picked. If you go smaller, if your drawing is smaller than that, it's going to be harder to deal with. You don't have to make it massive, you know, but try to give me a drawing about yay big, right? Like let it fill about an 8.5 by 11 area on your page. And I'm going to keep live streaming.